African folktales have long been a medium for passing down wisdom from one generation to the next. These stories, woven with mystery, morality, and supernatural forces, serve as cautionary tales to guide people in their daily lives. But what happens when a tale reveals a truth so shocking it changes everything? Welcome to Innocent Stories, where we uncover the heart of Africa's most gripping tales. In one such tale, deep within a village surrounded by vast plains and dense forests, lived a girl named Zala. Zala was not like other daughters. Where others showed love and respect, she carried anger. Where others sat at their mother's feet for stories and wisdom, she turned away with resentment. Her mother, Mama Abani, was known for her kindness, yet kindness alone was not enough to soften Zala's heart. From the time she could speak, her words were harsh. As she grew, those words turned into actions, small acts of defiance that escalated into something darker. Can you imagine a daughter turning against the one who gave her life? Stay with Innocent Stories as we unravel this mystery. Soon, the villagers began to whisper. Mama Abani was seen with bruises, but when asked, she only smiled and blamed her own clumsiness. The people knew better. They saw how Zala's eyes burned with something unnatural, something that made even the elders shake their heads. Some believed she was possessed. Others thought she had been born with a cruel spirit. No one could understand how a daughter could raise a hand against the woman who had given her life. The village chief once summoned Mama Abani, urging her to speak the truth, but she refused. A mother's heart is deep like the river, she said simply. It carries things no one else can see. Years passed, and the cruelty continued. Zala, now a young woman, did not hide her hatred. She struck her mother when she was displeased, shouted at her in the marketplace, making even the strongest men lower their gaze. It was as though she wished for the whole village to see her anger, to witness her rage. But why? One day, the sky turned dark with heavy clouds, and a storm rumbled in the distance. The villagers took shelter, but in Mama Abani's home, something far greater than a storm was about to unfold. Zala stood over her mother, eyes wild, fists clenched. But before she could strike again, Mama Abani did something she had never done before. She spoke, not in whispers, not in riddles, but in a voice that shook the walls. Enough! Zala froze. The storm outside howled, as if the wind itself had been waiting for this moment. Mama Abani stood tall, her frail form no longer bending under the weight of silence. And then, with a calmness that made Zala's heart pound, she said the words that would change everything. The truth had been buried for years, hidden beneath patience, beneath bruises, beneath sacrifice. But it was about to rise, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. The village lay nestled between rolling green hills and vast golden plains, where the sun painted the earth in hues of amber every evening. Small thatched roof huts stood in clusters, their walls made of sun-dried clay, each home carrying the scent of burning wood and freshly pounded grain. Life in the village moved at a steady rhythm, dictated by the seasons, the rising and setting of the sun, and the customs that had been passed down for generations. Men spent their days in the fields, working under the relentless heat, their hands hardened by years of tilling the land. Women gathered by the river, washing clothes and sharing stories, their laughter mixing with the sound of rushing water. Children ran barefoot through the dusty paths, their voices echoing in the air as they played games taught by their ancestors. Elders sat beneath the great baobab tree at the village's center, their wisdom shaping the minds of the young. Respect for traditions was the foundation of life here. Everyone had a place, a duty, and an unspoken understanding that family was sacred. In one of the modest huts on the village's edge lived Mama Abani and her daughter, Zala. Their home was much like the others, yet within its walls lay a story unlike any other. Mama Abani was a woman of quiet strength, her dark skin kissed by years under the sun, her hands rough from hard work yet gentle in their touch. She was neither the wealthiest nor the most influential woman in the village, but she was known for her kindness. She had the patience of the river endlessly flowing, unwavering, always finding a way around obstacles without complaint. Zala was born on a night when the moon hung low and full, its silver light spilling over the land like a mother's embrace. From the moment she took her first breath, Mama Abani loved her with a fierceness that only a mother could understand. She carried her on her back while working in the fields, whispered lullabies to her under the open sky, and shielded her from the cold with her own thin blanket. She had little to give, but what she had, she gave freely. But as the years passed, something changed. Where most daughters clung to their mothers, Zala pulled away. Where other children laughed at their mother's stories, she remained silent. And where love should have grown, there was a distance that no one could explain. Mama Abney never questioned it aloud, though her heart ached with every cold glance and unkind word. The villagers noticed. They whispered among themselves when Zala ignored her mother in public, when she rolled her eyes at her gentle scolding, when she walked ahead instead of beside her. She is young, they said at first. She will learn. But as Zala grew older, her indifference turned into something darker, something that made even the elders shake their heads. Mama Abney never raised her voice, never spoke of the pain she carried, never sought pity. She continued to cook for her daughter, to braid her hair at night when she allowed it, to pray for her well-being, even when Zala had nothing but sharp words in return. No one knew why Zala's heart had hardened toward her mother. No one could understand why a child who had been given nothing but love would choose to return it with cruelty. Some believed it was merely the arrogance of youth. Others whispered of unseen forces at play. But one thing was certain, the bond that should have been unbreakable was fractured beyond repair. And yet, Mama Abney carried on, as rivers do, as mothers do, as if she had always known that someday the truth would rise to the surface. There was no single moment that marked the shift in Zala's behavior. It was not as though one day she had been a loving daughter and the next she had turned cruel. It happened slowly, creeping in like a shadow at dusk, so gradual that no one could pinpoint when the warmth in her eyes had faded or when her laughter had lost its joy. As a child, she had been quiet but observant. She did not run with the other village girls, did not giggle at their games, did not cling to her mother's side the way most daughters did. But she was not unkind, not yet. Mama Abney noticed the way she distanced herself, but she did not worry. Some children were simply different, she told herself. Some needed time. But time did not soften Zala. By the time she reached adolescence, her indifference had turned into something more, something sharp, something biting. Her words, once few, became laced with venom. She rolled her eyes at her mother's guidance, snapped at her in frustration, and spoke to her with a tone no daughter should ever use. At first, the villagers assumed it was the arrogance of youth. She is headstrong, they said. She will grow out of it. But she did not grow out of it. As the years passed, her disrespect turned into outright cruelty. She mocked her mother openly, ridiculed her kindness, laughed at her sacrifices. She refused to help with household chores, leaving Mama Abney to carry heavy baskets alone, to sweep the dirt floors by herself, to mend the torn clothes that Zala discarded carelessly. Then came the nights of shouting. The first time the villagers heard Zala's raised voice from within the small hut, they were shocked. The gentle, ever-patient Mama Abney never argued, never scolded, never fought back. Yet her daughter's voice cut through the still night, filled with anger, accusations, and something deeper, something no one could quite name. She is just testing her boundaries, the elders said. She will learn. But she did not learn. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, Zala's anger boiled over. Mama Abney had asked her to fetch water from the river, a simple task, one that every child in the village had done without question. But Zala refused. When her mother gently insisted, Zala did something no one could have ever imagined. She struck her. The slap echoed through the small hut, a sound so unnatural, so wrong, that even the birds outside fell silent. Mama Abney did not react. She did not raise her hand in defense, did not cry out, did not so much as flinch. She simply looked at her daughter with eyes full of something unspoken, something unreadable. Zala turned away, her breath heavy, her hands trembling, and though she did not say it, something within her had shifted. That night, the line had been crossed, and once crossed, it could not be undone. The abuse did not stop there. At first, it was only when they were alone, when no one could see, when no one could hear. But as time passed, Zala no longer cared who was watching. She shoved her mother aside in the marketplace when she moved too slowly. She yanked food from her hands without a word of thanks. She pushed past her so forcefully one day that Mama Abney lost her balance and fell to the ground, dust clinging to her worn clothes. The villagers saw. They whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disapproval, but no one intervened. No one dared step between a mother and her daughter. It was a family matter, they told themselves. It was not their place. Mama Abney never spoke of it. She never defended herself, never raised her voice, never pushed back. When someone asked about the bruises, she smiled softly and blamed her own clumsiness. "She is my daughter," she would say simply. "She is still learning." But the truth was, Zala was not learning. She was unraveling. And deep down, in the quiet corners of her heart, Mama Abney knew that the truth, the real truth, could not stay hidden forever. At first, the village elders dismissed Zala's behavior as nothing more than youthful defiance. Every generation had its share of rebellious children, those who pushed against tradition, who spoke out of turn, who tested the patience of their parents. "She is still young," they said, nodding knowingly. "She will learn respect in time." But time passed, and Zala did not change. If anything, her behavior grew worse. Where before there had only been cold words and careless neglect, now there was anger, open hostility, and even violence. The villagers saw how she treated her mother, saw the way she spoke to her with disdain, the way she shoved past her as if she were nothing more than an obstacle in her path. They saw, and they whispered. Some believed she was simply spoiled, too used to her mother's kindness, never having faced true hardship. Others thought it was a phase, something that would burn out as she grew older. But there were those who were not so sure. "She is not like the other children," one old woman murmured one evening as she pounded millet into flour. "There is something wrong with that girl." "She was born under a strange moon," another replied, shaking her head. "A night too quiet, too still." It was not long before whispers turned into rumors. Some claimed that Zala had been cursed from birth, that a dark spirit had entered her soul before she had even taken her first breath. Others insisted that Mama Abney had angered the ancestors in some way, and that her daughter's cruelty was a punishment sent by forces beyond their understanding. A few believed it was neither curse nor punishment, but something far worse, something unnatural, something hidden in the shadows of their past. The village's medicine man, a wise old figure with eyes clouded by age but sharp with knowing, was among those who watched closely. He saw the way Mama Abney flinched, not out of fear, but as if she carried a burden too heavy for one person alone. He noticed how she never asked for help, never defended herself, never even tried to explain. "Why do you allow this?" he asked her one evening as she sat by the river, her feet dipped in the cool water. "A mother must correct her child, or she will lose her," Mama Abney smiled, but it was a tired smile, one that did not quite reach her eyes. "She is my daughter," she said simply. "What she does not understand." It was an answer, but not the answer he had expected. As the seasons changed and the rumors grew, a new fear crept into the hearts of the villagers. They began to avoid Mama Abney's hut, wary of what lingered in its shadows. Children were told not to go too close. Women lowered their voices when passing by. It was said that strange noises could be heard at night, whispers that did not belong to the wind. The mystery deepened when an elder, a woman known for her dreams that often came true, woke one morning with a face pale as ash. "I saw something," she told the others. "I saw the past reaching for the present, and I saw a truth that has been buried for too long." But when pressed for answers, she only shook her head. "The mother knows," she whispered. "And one day, the daughter will too." The weight of those words settled over the village like a storm cloud, heavy with the promise of something yet to come. And in the heart of it all stood Mama Abney, silent and unyielding, holding a secret she refused to share. The night the truth was revealed, the air was thick with the scent of rain, though not a single drop had fallen. The sky was restless, heavy with dark clouds that swirled like whispers of something unseen. The villagers, sensing an unease they could not name, retreated into their huts earlier than usual, locking their doors and muttering quiet prayers. But in a small hut at the edge of the village, there was no peace. Zala had come home in one of her moods, her face twisted with anger, her hands clenched into fists. She had lashed out before, but this time, something in her was different. The rage inside her burned hotter, wilder, as if it had been waiting for this moment to finally break free. Mama Abney stood near the fire, her eyes calm but knowing. She did not cower, did not try to stop what was coming. She only watched as her daughter stormed toward her, her voice sharp like a blade. Why do you never fight back? Zala spat, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Why do you let me treat you like this? Why don't you hate me? Mama Abani did not answer. Say something. Zala screamed, shoving her mother's frail frame. The older woman stumbled but did not fall. She simply looked at her, and for the first time in years, Zala saw something in her eyes that sent a shiver down her spine. It was not fear. It was not sadness. It was something deeper, pity. The realization enraged her. With a cry of frustration, Zala grabbed the nearest clay pot and hurled it to the ground. It shattered into pieces, the sound ringing out like a final warning. And then, in the silence that followed, Mama Abani spoke. You want me to hate you, she said softly, but I cannot hate what is not mine. Zala froze. The words did not make sense. They couldn't. What? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Mama Abani sighed, as if a weight she had carried for too long was finally too heavy to bear. She turned to the small wooden chest that had remained locked in the corner of their hut for as long as Zala could remember. Slowly, carefully, she opened it. Inside was a single bundle wrapped in old, worn cloth. With trembling hands, Mama Abani pulled it out and unwrapped it, revealing a small necklace, delicate, golden, with a symbol Zala did not recognize. This, Mama Abani said, holding it out, belonged to your mother. Zala's heart pounded. You're my mother. Mama Abani shook her head. No, she said, her voice thick with something unspoken. I am not. The world tilted. Zala stumbled back, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. No, she said again, as if saying it enough times would make it untrue. You're lying. Mama Abani's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. I have never lied to you, child, she said. But I have hidden the truth. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as Zala's mind raced. Then you were found, Mama Abani interrupted gently, on the night of the Great Fire. Zala's breath caught in her throat. She had heard stories of the fire, the tragedy that had struck a village not far from theirs many years ago. A sudden blaze had consumed everything in its path, leaving nothing but ash and sorrow behind. It had happened when she was just a baby, but it had nothing to do with her. Did it? You were a baby, Mama Abani continued, barely breathing, buried beneath the wreckage of a burning hut. Your real mother, she must have hidden you there, hoping you would survive. Zala's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, her hands trembling as she reached for the necklace, running her fingers over the unfamiliar symbol. Who was she? She asked, her voice breaking. Mama Abani knelt beside her. I do not know, she admitted. The village was gone before we could learn their names. But I could not leave you there. I could not let you die. Zala's vision blurred as 1,000 memories flooded her mind, memories that were no longer hers, but those of a girl she did not know, a girl she had never been. You took me, she whispered, more to herself than to Mama Abani. You raised me as your own. Mama Abani nodded. I loved you as my own. Zala's hands clenched around the necklace, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Then why, she choked out. Why did I hate you? Why did I, her voice broke. Mama Abani reached out, but Zala flinched away. The older woman's eyes darkened with sorrow. Perhaps your heart knew, she said softly, even when your mind did not. Zala squeezed her eyes shut. The rage, the resentment, the unexplained fury that had burned inside her for as long as she could remember, it all made sense now. She had never felt like she belonged because she never truly had. And yet, she had. Mama Abani had given her everything: food, shelter, warmth, love, even when it was not returned, even when she was beaten down by the very child she had saved. Zala's chest ached with something new, guilt. A sob ripped from her throat, raw and broken. What have I done? Mama Abani reached for her again, and this time, Zala did not pull away. She fell into her arms, clinging to her as though she were drowning. Mama Abani stroked her hair, the way she had when she was a child, her voice gentle. You are still my daughter, she whispered, no matter what blood runs in your veins. For the first time in her life, Zala did not resist. And outside, the rain finally began to fall. The weight of the truth settled over Zala like a heavy storm cloud, pressing into her chest with unbearable force. The anger that had burned inside her for years had been replaced by something far worse: guilt. She had spent her whole life hating the woman who had saved her. She had cursed her, hit her, treated her as if she were nothing. And all this time, Mama Abney had endured it in silence, carrying the burden of a secret meant to protect her. Zala could barely look at her now. For days, she kept to herself, unable to face the woman she had wronged. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of her own cruelty: the way she had shoved Mama Abney aside, the harsh words she had spoken, the pain in her mother's eyes that she had ignored. The guilt was suffocating. But Mama Abney did not change. She still cooked, still worked, still moved through the village as she always had. If she carried any resentment, she did not show it. If she held on to bitterness, she never let it surface. It was Zala who could not bear the silence. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Zala found her mother sitting outside their hut, weaving a mat with steady hands. The firelight flickered across her face, casting long shadows. Zala hesitated before stepping closer. Her voice was hoarse when she finally spoke. "How can you stand to look at me?" Mama Abney did not pause in her weaving. "Because you are my daughter." Zala swallowed hard. "I don't deserve that." Mama Abney sighed, setting the mat aside. She turned to face Zala fully, her expression unreadable. "Tell me," she said, "why do you think you were so angry?" Zala opened her mouth but found she had no answer. The fury, the resentment, it had always been there, simmering beneath the surface, but she had never questioned why. She had only acted on it, allowing it to consume her. "You felt something was missing," Mama Abney continued. "Even if you did not understand it. That pain, the not knowing, the feeling of being lost, it became something else, something neither of us could control." Zala felt her throat tighten. "But you did nothing wrong." Mama Abney's gaze softened. "Neither did you." Zala's breath caught. She had expected anger, expected coldness, expected anything but this. She had expected her mother to turn her away, to let her drown in the weight of her own mistakes. But Mama Abney, as always, was patient. "You were a child," she said simply. "And now you are not. You know the truth, and you must decide what to do with it." Zala lowered her head. "I want to fix things," she whispered. "I want to make it right." Mama Abney studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Then you must start with the village." The villagers had not forgotten the way Zala had treated her mother. They had seen it for years, shaking their heads in disapproval, muttering their own theories about what had gone wrong. Some had pitied Mama Abney, while others had believed she was weak for never fighting back. But when Zala walked through the village that morning, stopping at each home, something shifted. She apologized, not just to Mama Abney, but to those who had watched and done nothing. She spoke to the elders, admitting her shame, her sorrow. She went to the children she had once scolded harshly and knelt to meet their eyes. And then, in the center of the village, she stood before the people and spoke the words she had never imagined herself saying. "My mother saved me," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "And I hurt her. I cannot change what I have done, but I can change what I do next. I ask for your forgiveness." A hush fell over the village. For a long time, no one spoke. And then, one by one, the elders nodded. The women murmured to each other, some nodding in approval. The medicine man, who had long watched from the shadows, smiled knowingly. And Mama Abney, standing at the edge of the crowd, met Zala's gaze. Zala took a step toward her, hesitating. "Can you ever forgive me?" Mama Abney did not answer with words. Instead, she opened her arms. Zala did not hesitate. She fell into them, feeling the warmth, the acceptance, the love she had spent years rejecting. As the village watched, the storm that had lingered for so long finally began to clear. As the days passed, the village slowly returned to its rhythm, but something had changed. It was not just Zala who had learned a lesson, it was everyone. The elders, who had once whispered about the girl's rage, now saw how deep-rooted pain could twist a person's heart. The young ones, who had feared her, now watched with curiosity as she helped her mother gather water, mend baskets, and tend to the fields. Even those who had been indifferent now saw the truth. Sometimes, anger is not born from hatred, but from wounds left unhealed. Zala had wronged her mother, and she knew it. But she also knew now that redemption was not found in words alone. It was found in actions. Day by day, she worked to rebuild the trust she had shattered, proving with each small deed that she was not the same girl she had been before the truth came out. Mama Abani, as always, remained steady. She had known pain, known loss, known what it was to carry love even when it was not returned. And yet, she had never once regretted raising Zala as her own. For her, love was not something given on conditions. It was something that endured, even in the face of suffering. This story, like many African folktales, carried a lesson deeper than its surface. It was a story about patience, about understanding, about the unseen battles that people carry within them. It was about forgiveness, not just from others, but the forgiveness we must find within ourselves. The villagers, having witnessed the transformation, told the tale for years to come. Parents reminded their children that anger, when left unspoken, could become a poison that turned them against the ones who loved them most. The elders shared the lesson that true family was not always determined by blood, but by the love and sacrifice that one chose to give. And Zala herself, having finally found her place, walked through the village no longer as a girl consumed by anger, but as a woman who had learned the weight of truth and the freedom of redemption. In the end, the story was not just about a girl who had beaten her mother. It was about a mother who had never stopped loving her daughter, even when she had every reason to let go. And that, above all else, was the greatest lesson of all. Thank you for joining us on Innocent Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this powerful tale with others.